Welcome to the show, Gearheads. We just watched the Formula One Austrian Grand Prix penalty show, and we're going to try to break that all down.
I thought that was the Euros, the penalty shootouts.
Yeah, this is the penalty show today. I actually was exciting enough to watch race, but this John Massengill sitting in the studio with Jonathan Green, Les Kaiser, and we have over Zoom Bob Varsha and Dave O'Neill. And Jonathan, I'll start with you. What did you think of the race today?
I mean, the one guy who actually I would like to have seen more of was the guy that won the race, because we hardly saw him, but he was in a world of his own again. And this is clearly, I mean, we can say it now emphatically, it's clearly a new chapter for Red Bull. They've got the reliability, they've got the driver, and frankly, they've also got a second driver now, which is what they've been searching for in Perez. Wrongly or rightly, I think he had a rough day, did Perez, because there's nowhere to overtake here. I described it as a kart track, but I thought the penalties were just wrong, personally.
Yeah, too many, and I want to get all you guys' take on this. But Verstappen wins, Bottas, Norris, Hamilton, Sainz, Perez, Ricardo, Leclerc, Gasly, Alonso in 10th, just ahead of George Russell, who he passed to push out of the points. That was a little bit sad to watch. But then Tsunoda in 12th, Stroll, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Raikkonen, Vettel, Mick Schumacher, Mazepin, and Ocon, who, of course, did not finish the race. But, Bob, I heard you and Dave talking before we went on, so I know that this was not your ideal race with all these penalties.
Well, you never like to see officials deciding the outcome of a race, and I think that happened to some measure today, certainly in the case of Sergio Perez. I agreed with Paul di Resta on the race call, saying you want drivers to race aggressively. This is the World Championship. This is the sharp end of the spear. You want guys to be wheel to wheel and duking it out. And so I thought those were unfair penalties. But once they nicked Perez for forcing Leclerc off the road, when it happened again, they had to penalize him again to be consistent. And, you know, same with Lando Norris. I mean, once you start, I guess it was Norris maybe that was penalized first. But once you start throwing those penalties around, you can't stop. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I thought these were just hard racing situations. And, you know, that was just unfortunate.
I know it's what we want to see. We want to see that racing. Well, Dave O'Neill, what do you think about all these penalties?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. Unless you're in the team, you know, and you gain the advantage from it. But the, you know, the first one with Norris and Perez, I thought that was definitely just a racing incident. They were racing hard. The track is reasonably wide there, strangely enough, for a small circuit. But the second one, if you did want to digest it and split them up a little bit, Perez did hit Leclerc, you know, before he got to the kind of bit of the corner. So that shoved Leclerc off the track. But again, I don't like to see that. It would be interesting to see how fair they are, you know, in all the driver meetings. During the course of the weekend, it was consistency is what the drivers were asking from the stewards. And, you know, like Bob said, they handed one out, so they had to hand the other out. And if they didn't, they wouldn't have done for the second one. So between Raikkonen and Vettel, I'd like to see what sort of penalties handed out there. You know, that's a difficult one to choose whose fault that was. I think that Vettel got past Raikkonen, but he also hit Raikkonen when he was shutting the door. So I don't know. It's not great to see the result influenced by decisions like that, but I guess that's what we saw today.
Well, let me give out the phone number in case somebody wants to give us their opinion. 512-643-5483. 512-643-LIVE. Les Kaiser, you know, I know that you were complaining here in the studio about the penalties. Do you agree with these boys?
I do actually. You know, exactly. The first one, Sergio, you were out of line. You know, but the others I thought were legit racing. Excuse me, it's just opposite. I thought the Sergio turning in on the second episode was not something that was legit racing. I needed a penalty.
I felt that Leclerc's overtake, he was further past than Perez was on Norris. And there's no question, I agree with Bob, that he turned, well, he didn't turn in on him, but he definitely forced Leclerc on the second corner off, in my opinion. So, I think, like you say, given that they'd done the first one, which I thought was unfair on Norris, then they were kind of stuck with having to give that 5-second penalty out every time. But I just didn't think the second one was worthwhile. I didn't think the first one was worthwhile either.
You hear us splitting hairs here about who was slightly ahead and all that, what point of the turn and all that kind of thing. And, that's not the kind of thing you want to be doing.
No, I agree.
Yeah, that's not what we want to be talking about now either. We want to be talking about Lando Norris and his the fact that he converted a race into a podium. But well, guys, we have a caller on the line. We got a couple of callers on the line. Let's start with Ray in North Carolina, NASCAR country. Hey, Ray.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. Happy July 4th to you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Today's race, it was pretty interesting. I like seeing Alonso come through the field. Pretty consistent. He had a good run today. And then for it being a back-to-back race, like to get your thoughts on if you like to see that more in the future.
Good question.
Good question. What do you think, Jonathan? Go ahead.
I'd like to see it, but I think there needs to be more of a variance or more than just changing the tires. If possible. I don't know what that means, whether you shorten the race, whether you do something funky, but just back-to-back races for the sake of back-to-back races. They talked about it in Austin, and I was like, yeah, but you can't have Billy Joel twice, in 1 week's time. And what happens when 260,000 people show up at COTA? What happens the following week? What I'm getting at is that you've got to create an event that is different. And I think it works here. And it showed it worked here, but the result was the same, a 30-second win almost for Verstappen. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn a little bit. I just would like to see some distinction. Yeah,
and of course, a lot of this is pandemic driven.
Yes,
as we've seen last year and this year too. As long as it's in Austin, I'm in favor of them.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about a few things.
About budget. I mean, we've seen the lower formula, like F3 is racing, 3 times this weekend on the track. For teams that are more modestly budgeted, you kind of have to do that sort of thing. But this is, again, the sharp end of things. This is the Formula One World Championship, and you want to go to as many countries around the world as you can. The pandemic has messed things up, the economy has messed things up, and so you need to take steps. But by the same token, when we get back to some state of normality, I think we're better off with one race in each country and hit as many countries as you can to spread the gospel of Formula One.
Yeah, and as Bob points out, the F3, same as in this country, they reverse grids and they do fastest laps from the first race to decide a grid, and so on and so forth. So that's the distinction I'm talking about, which is changing things up so that it doesn't become a pedestrian 3 races, or in F3's case.
Yeah. Well, we were talking once before, Jonathan, I think you were traveling on that, about how would you make the second COTA race different.
Mm-hmm.
And I hearkened back to the Aussie V8 where we ran a shorter course.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of doing it after dark. Maybe have a Saturday night race instead of a Sunday night.
And throw in the sprinklers.
Yeah, it's sprinklers and water cannons from the spectators. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Hey, we still got Ray on the line. Ray, you still there?
Yeah.
Hey, have you been speaking of COTA, have you been here to the race?
No, I've been down to Fort Worth for the NASCAR race, but I have not been to the actual track.
Well, how would you like to come to the 2021 Formula One United States Grand Prix here in Austin at Circuit of the Americas?
That would just be insane. That would be awesome.
Well, we are going to give you a pair of tickets to come to Austin.
Awesome. I'm speechless. Thanks, guys.
Book your flight.
Stay on the line. We'll get your email.
Yeah.
All right.
You're going to check.
What was that, Bob?
You got to use those tickets, and we're going to check to make sure.
That's
you
right.
Yeah. We'll come find you.
Well, actually, these are going to be at will call, so he's got to use them. So
there you go.
All right, we got a couple more minutes. Let's grab another caller. We got Andy P on the line.
He gets nothing.
Wait, no, we're not taking him today.
He gets nothing.
Andy P, welcome to the show, buddy.
Good morning, guys. Happy 4th of July.
Hey,
too,
happy,
bud.
happy McLaren Day.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, so I'm getting ready. I'm doing my pre-race kind of rituals, and all of a sudden I hear my name, and I did a turnaround when I was listening to the pre-show this morning. Thanks for the shout-out.
Well, we thought of you immediately when Lando had that lap yesterday.
Yeah, so Andy P is hardcore McLaren. So yeah, tell us.
Oh, I mean, the fact that he overcame the time penalty was just amazing.
Yep.
And, I would say if he had maybe, if they could have maybe done a 2-stop, he might have gotten Bottas, but, maybe P2, but I'll take the P3. Just great effort all weekend.
I know. I mean, you know what? I'm not like you, a big giant McLaren fan, but I am a big Lando fan, and just as much because he's a likable guy, but also for the sport itself, because he's good for the sport, man. He's so exciting. Well, and look, and we're talking about Daniel. We're not even talking about Daniel Ricciardo, who's been in that same role really for the last several years. He's one of the most likable guys in the paddock. So, yeah, Andy, you got the two best, most likable drivers for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun lineup, and it was nice to see Danny do a really good recovery drive today. It's just if he can nail the qualifying pace, that's the plan. You've seen it, and they actually do pull 7 points on a really hard-charging Ferrari team who are back up there too.
Yeah, and Andy, I know you're a true orange man, but there really is a difference now in the McLaren. With Zach at the helm, there just feels like a really good air, and it's not just the personality of the drivers, but they are warming to it. We noticed it a couple of years ago when we asked to do an interview with McLaren. We got both drivers. We didn't even ask, and we got both drivers, and they sat there and talked with each other as well as to us, and it was just it's very unusual in Formula One terms, and it's a real breath of fresh air for McLaren.
Yeah, it's a good atmosphere in the team, and I would put that on Zach. And as it's 4th of July, an American influence on it because, and that's super important, and it's great to see.
Thank you, Andy. That is exactly what I want to hear. American influence, how it's affecting the sport. But Andy, we are up against the top of the hour. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for being a fan, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you at Silverstone.
Yep. Have a good one, guys.
Take care.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get that first break in, and we're going to talk more about American influence in the sport too during the show. But you're listening to Speed City live from Austin, Texas. Back after these messages.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right, welcome back. Bob, you said during the break there's a couple things we really need to talk about. Why don't we talk about Mercedes first?
I think this was a significant race, given the way Mercedes handled their strategy. Number one, allowing Bottas to pass Hamilton in an organized way, team orders for Bottas to pass his team leader. Hamilton is still the leader in the championship within the team, and yet they put Bottas in front of him. And then they pitted Hamilton late in the race and put on a set of hard compound tires. And I wasn't sure what the point of that was. He didn't have any more of the softest, but he did have a fresh set of the medium compound, and yet they put him on the white hard compound. So I'm not sure what that was, but the big thing was them switching Hamilton and Bottas on track. And as Julian Palmer said in their post-race analysis, it really seemed like a waving of the white flag by Mercedes, saying, we're in a holding pattern now. We're trying to consolidate a position other than the one we've held as we've dominated this series for the last 7 years. I think they've got Mercedes on the back foot in a really important way. As I said in the pre-race show, Mercedes has said they're not going to continue to update this car, in which case they're going to be fighting with their hands, with one hand behind their backs for the rest of the season. I think that's kind of significant. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that Max Verstappen, who, as Jonathan pointed out, we didn't see a whole lot of, and that's what happens when you get way out in front and just dust everybody. This is the first time in his career that he has hit for the slam by winning from pole, leading every lap, and taking the point for fast lap.
Yeah, he could have had one hand tied behind his back today. what were you going to say, Jonathan?
Yeah, I just following on what Bob said, the only thing that concerns me about that decision by Mercedes was it was a change around within a minute or so, because they came on the radio and said to Bottas, do not overtake Hamilton despite the damage that he got to the floor. And then they reversed the decision and said, you can race Lewis. It was almost as though they were like, well, what should we do here then? You know, it was very Teutonic of them.
Well, we got a couple.
They went a step farther and said, Lewis, let Bottas.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of callers on the line. We got Matthew who's been holding a while. Matthew is calling from California. Hey, Matthew, welcome to Speed City.
Morning over here in the West Coast.
Morning.
Morning.
Great to hear everybody and all the updates. I really have no idea what's going on in Mercedes. Who can really figure that out? Maybe they're just trying to get Bottas some points. It's kind of weird to say.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, especially considering the contract situation that's going on.
Then they'll fire him.
Yeah, get him some points, and then they'll fire him. So, you are a fan out in California getting up early.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been following this since, of course, Jack Brabham days, Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart. We can go on, Jim Clark and James Hunt. So, it's been in my blood since I've been born, and love every week, every single week. You guys are great, and it's just great to have everybody in it. We need another race in the U.S. somewhere. Watkins Glen, anything.
What about California?
I mean, absolutely. It's been a while. Maybe down in Monterey there.
Ooh, Laguna Seca, yes.
Oh, man, it'd take a lot of work, but I'd totally be there.
Well, they got new management, so...
Oh, is Jill not there?
They can do it.
She's gone.
Yeah, they could do it. You're right, Matthew. They can make it happen.
Absolutely. I mean, if they can do it a couple of times in so many other parts of the world, there's no reason they can't do it over here in the U.S.
Let me ask you a question. You've been obviously watching it over the years. What do you think of this era under Liberty with these young drivers and this sort of new media, all the rest of it, everything that's changing in Formula One? What do you think of this era, let's say from 2010 on?
I think it's absolutely well needed. I mean, for instance, as you both well talked about with Lando Norris, I mean, he shot out of the cannon last year. As much as he was racing beforehand, he's just one of the many drivers, and it's so great to see him, right on the first line today. I mean, and he drove a great race. I mean, I know you both have been talking about penalties, but I mean, I guess it's just trying to keep the drivers safe, from going off track and all that. But as far as all these new drivers, it's just so well needed. You just got to have it. It's paramount to get new people following the sport.
I know that's been that's been my favorite thing about the last couple of years is all these new drivers. Yeah, it's great to have our drivers that
talented
were big
drivers.
But that's right, and obviously talented. But it's you love to have your old favorites. But man, these new drivers just make it so much fun to me.
Oh, it is. We need not just new blood, but new followers, new spectators. It's so great to see the stands full. And next 2 weeks over at Silverstone, see that. That's going to be a doozy.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, thanks for calling, and thanks. I love the level of our callers. It's like everybody's super intelligent, super enthusiastic. Matthew, thank you. Appreciate you calling.
He's got a funny accent, but we're getting used to it.
He's from California.
That was not a California.
That means he'll be moving to Austin soon.
Oh my God.
Well, we implemented that rule. You have to kick 2 people out.
Am I on the list?
You're strongly at risk, sir.
Okay. You've been here
You're
long
on the
enough.
bubble. Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right. Hey, guys, the Speed City post-race show, the Formula One post-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Use the cloud to secure your team in the office, at the track, or anywhere with CrowdStrike at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. We have another caller on the line. We got Joe from Washington, D.C. Hey, Joe. Welcome to Speed City.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Great race this morning. So I'm kind of the opposite of Matthew here. I'm a brand new fan to F1. This is really the first season I followed. Watched the documentary on Netflix. Really got me into it. I've really been enjoying this season. Kind of back to Mercedes. Do you think there's a chance they can still catch up for the year, or do you think Max pretty much has it locked down?
Bob?
Just based on what I've seen just from this season, he's been extremely dominant, and seems like Mercedes really seems to be faltering.
I love this question, Joe, and I want to throw that question to Bob Varsha. Bob, what do you think?
Whether Verstappen has it all wrapped up?
Yeah, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Can Mercedes come back?
That's a very plausible argument. I think Mercedes can, even though they do not intend, according to them, to try to update this car. We've done 9 of a hoped for 23 races. There is so much racing still to come, and so many things can happen. Yeah, I think Mercedes can come back and do it, and at least in the Drivers' Championship and in the Constructors. I mean, if Perez continues to have issues with the Red Bull and finds himself further down in the finish order than he probably should, then if Hamilton and Bottas can finish right up there and podium often, Verstappen's not going to be able to do it by himself. Will outpoint them, and Mercedes can perhaps grab the Constructors' crown again, as has been said, is the one that really matters, because that's the one that pays the money. So yeah, definitely, Mercedes can come back.
Yeah, and I would say that comeback could start as early as Silverstone, because if today was a Dutch Fest, there's no question. People forget Toto Wolff might be in charge, and it's a German name on the car, but really that is a Brackley-based British team, and the wave of enthusiasm for both Lewis Hamilton and now a back-on-form Bottas will carry them strongly next weekend. They'll be camping out from Tuesday onwards. It's the British summer. Everybody's finally out and about. I think, there's going to be a wave of national euphoria for Hamilton to win. So watch them bounce back.
Dare I say that I will be rooting for the Mercedes team to come back after all this time? I just want great racing. Well, Joe, hey, I love the fact that you came from the Netflix world, but are you a fan of other motorsports? Like, do you watch IndyCar, NASCAR, or is this all new for you?
I grew up watching a little bit of NASCAR with my grandfather. Used to go out to the race here in Dover, Delaware, every now and then. Always really enjoyed it, but never really followed it all that closely. Always been automotive enthusiast, though. Went to a few IndyCar races back in the day, staying with my grandfather. So always enjoyed motorsports, always enjoyed cars. This is probably the closest I've ever followed one.
Okay.
Hoping to get out to the race over in Austin this year. Drag my grandfather, my dad, maybe my brother as well. So.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a car guy, and I can hear you're in the car. What are you driving? We asked this. By the way, we ask all the Formula One drivers what they drive every day. So what are you driving?
So I went from a Camaro over to a Jeep Wrangler. Actually, just picked this up a few weeks ago for some summer driving on the beach.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay, so did
really
you buy
enjoying it so far.
Did you get the new one with the 475 horsepower, or did you just get the regular one?
Just the regular for now.
Okay.
How do you know that?
The hybrid though.
How do you not know that?
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a fun Jeep.
Oh my gosh, the new SRT8 Jeep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Joe, we have given away our tickets for this week. We're going to do this for the rest of the season, so please call in, please stay tuned, and we're going to give away some tickets. And also, you can go to our website, speedcitybroadcast.com/win, and you can register for tickets there. We're going to give some away on our website. But, Joe, thanks for calling. Thanks for being a new fan.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, guys. Nice talking to you.
All right, you too. What were you going to say, Les?
Yeah, and, a lot of folks are learning you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all different places. So, yeah.
Yeah, please go to our YouTube.
You really want to see a couple old men.
Yeah, going to say use the filter, though, because early morning, I don't know.
You're going to love this. My sister, who has a hair salon, and she was watching the show, she goes, "You guys need some makeup."
She's right.
I said, we're not a bunch of young spring chickens. That's why.
Disgusting act, and it's unfortunate to read that on air live. That is disgusting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Producer Casey. You know what? I want to ask Dave O'Neill a really big question, but it's what?
Makeup?
No, nothing to do with that. But I want to ask him about this pit stop situation. Dave was a former team manager and sporting director of the Haas F1 team, and we now have Formula One coming out saying we're going to slow down the pit stops because Red Bull's too fast.
I'm going to say 2.2. You can't go any quicker.
Yeah, Max had 2.2 today.
Yep.
Yeah, and well, they've had below 2 a couple times. But we need to get a break in, so I'm going to tease that because that's a huge discussion. I want Dave to talk about that after the break. So let's do that. And you're listening to Speed City Live from Austin, Texas, and back after these messages.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
So we just got through back-to-back in Formula One, triple header, and Max Verstappen 1-1-1. So he's got to be happy. Probably a little champagne flowing with a week off. But when we went to break, we said we were going to talk to our resident expert, former Haas F1 team manager, Dave O'Neill, about maybe about Red Bull, but about how Formula One is going to slow down pit stops. And I'm like, wait a minute. We're at the pinnacle of motorsports. This is what we love about our sport, this kind of crazy stuff where they can have sub 2-second pit stops. Dave, what is going on here? Why are they going to do this? And what do you think they will do to do this?
Well, yeah, same as you. My question is why. They spent, millions, I guess, getting the tyre changed, the wheel changed to sub 2 seconds, and I think it's a fantastic bit of engineering, to be honest. It also helps the team play a huge part in it. It makes the team the team. There's a lot of camaraderie in it. You don't just turn up and change the wheels. So I guess, when they were doing fueling, there was no need to have quick tyre changes because you had to do the wheels in 4 or 5 seconds once the fuel was done, which was the last thing the car would leave. But I guess just to put a bit of meat on the bone, how the whole system's developed over the last probably 10 years, it's become virtually fully automated, apart from the 3 humans on each corner and the jack guys. So if you can imagine, a quick rundown would be the car comes in, there's a board on the pit perch side, the driver turns in, stops on the marks. It used to be down to the nearest foot, but it kept getting reduced and reduced, so the driver had to be down to the nearest inch, if you like. Inch was too long. In this case, driver would stop, the car would go up in the air. The wheelmen would follow the car in actually before the car stopped, and the wheel nuts would be off before the car had stopped. The car would be in the air, hit the front jack up in the air, wheel off. The hardest job, in fact, in the pit stop is putting the wheel on, because you have to make sure you're straight. The gunman has to get out of the way, and any tap, it's just like a cricket ball or I don't know, like a goalkeeper, tapping the ball out of the net. If you have that slightest touch, that knocks everything out of sync. And then, of course, you have the real slow 3-second stop then. And typically when you have the slow stops, that's normally what's happened. The guy puts the gun back on. The nuts are in the wheels, so they're captured in the wheels. There's a huge amount of development done on the wheels and the nuts. And also the guns, the guns are a work of art.
Yeah.
Spend huge amounts of money on those. So the gun's buzzed up. It achieves its torque, which is, around about 600-700 foot-pounds of torque. The PSI on the guns is between 400 and 500 PSI, 30 bar, 35 bar type thing. It's almost an explosion. Once one side's done, the other side's done. They don't typically finish within a tenth of a second of each other. What happens then is the gun sends a signal to the jack, and whether it's the front or rear jack, whoever finishes first, the last one to finish, it will then dump the jack. So there's like a Moog valve on there, and it's an air system, and the jack will dump and go to the floor. The jack man moves out the way at the front, and the rear, he just stands there. And then the only kind of, default would be if the chief mechanic sees a car coming down the pit lane that thinks it's going to be in danger of crashing into the car that's leaving the pits. He'd then stop the system. So he'd push the button and the red light would come on, and the driver would see that. He sees the little traffic light, as I see, just in front of his face. and he'd wait for the light to go green. So no talking, obviously talking slow. So it's all signals and sounds that go on within the stop. So, again, fantastic bit of engineering. And again, what is the right time to stop it? It's part of the race. It's part of the strategy. Red Bull know they're quick. I know for a fact that Mercedes decided not to go the route that Red Bull were doing because they just didn't want to put the money and effort into training people up to be as quick as Red Bull. And Mercedes' strategy is to turn it around, I guess, on the FIA and get them working on trying to stop the system being so quick. So the game is played off track in the office as well. And that's kind of what Mercedes have done, is create a load of havoc to try and slow Red Bull down. Is kind of my view on it. I know we used to practice huge amounts, but again, the bigger teams practiced more because they had more time, they had more spare parts, so the car was finished and fixed. Whereas we had to finish and fix our car and then do the pit stops. So, it's like Bob says, it's the pinnacle of motorsport, and why leash it?
Yeah. Well, Dave, I've got one question for it. Totally agree. I love the technology. I love everything that's going into that. I feel like they're also trying to slow it down a little bit from a safety aspect.
That's what I was going to say.
And so I understand that. But what about the approach of reducing the number of guns to only 2 guns? So you can only do one side or only the front and back.
Like NASCAR.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a Texan.
I wasn't going to say like NASCAR. I purposely was going to avoid that. But Dave, it still involves the technology and all of that. What do you think?
Well, answer your first question. When was the last time someone was hurt in a pit stop with the equipment? It's mainly been a driver running someone over. So the drivers need to sort that out. And then, again, having people running around the car is more like a Mickey Mouse show. So, this is fully top of the range, top end, fast as you like. It's a science project. So, and again, that's what Formula One is. So I get what you're saying, but also in it and see what goes on behind the scenes to achieve what they're doing every weekend. It all looks a bit clinical, but it's not. It takes a huge amount of effort to get it to that stage.
You're
and
right.
With that argument that you need to slow the pit stops down for the purpose of safety, by reintroducing the human element, it sounds counterintuitive to me. I mean, if what Dave just described of the technology, the guns telling the jacks when the wheels are on, and then the jack drops the car with a human backup, as he mentioned, to hold in case there's traffic in the pit lane. How do you make it safer by stepping away from proven technology and reintroducing that element of potential human error?
Good point.
All righty, I back up on my statement. Those are all excellent comments there. No,
I never thought I'd hear a Texan say he wanted less guns. Too early?
No, we just don't want people like you with them.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I appreciate that, because that definitely, I love the breakdown. I understand it even better.
Yeah, it's really good.
But there was something else, Bob. You said something I wanted to get Dave's opinion on a while ago about. Oh, I'm drawing a blank now. But anyway, well, let's talk about some of these penalties that happened today, because I'm
You're going to have to narrow that down.
Well, yeah, no kidding. I don't know what the record is from.
Which line was the Sonoda dealing with?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Sonoda apparently the exact same error twice. Come on. All right, but the steward's decision reads. On the first Norris penalty, it says, at the entry of turn 4, Perez and Norris were side by side. Then on exit, Norris was judged to not give Perez enough room, and Perez was forced off the track.
He didn't move.
I know. That's what I was just going to say. Wait a minute. So come on now. And it looks like the 2 Perez penalties carry the exact same wording as the Norris one, and also had 2 penalty points for each, gives him 8 and 12 months, with one disappearing in Hungary and the other after Monza. So, but what, I mean, this was just way too distracting for me. And I know we touched on it, but the racing, I want more racing. So
it's an element of the sport that I think especially the new Netflix fan, don't understand. You know,
Yes.
if you're a sports fan, I followed American football, and there was a long time before certain rules became evident, because there are a lot of complex rules. But once you get it, you get it. And I think it's hard for a new fan coming in to understand those penalties when they seem like, oh, he just went off into the gravel there. That was unlucky. That's how you would see it and perceive it. And it's a bit like a foot in touch, or did the ball cross the line? In football, these are tiny nuances that you only learn as you get to know the game, or you get to know the racing. And I just wonder that penalties like that can be sometimes overbearing. And I think Derek Warwick was the driver stewards today, and he seemed pretty harsh to me.
Hey, that's what it was. Dave O'Neill, about the driver stewards, what do you think, like Jonathan just said, about how he can be a certain way? I mean, how much do their personalities or their particular preferences play into that?
Well, I mean, obviously, they get their directive from the FIA and safety on roads, and I think that the idea is to have clean racing, lots of overtaking, and a great spectacle. In order to do that, you need some form of judge to facilitate that. So, I guess Derek, he's hard. He's typically fair, but I think the decisions you saw today were because of the directive from the FIA. Is what they want is to clean that part of the sport up, and he did that, and he did it well. He gave 2 penalties for what we saw with that looked pretty similar. But again, where does it go, and how far do you keep cleaning it up? When Charlie was involved, he'd say, "Come on, guys, enough's enough. We're here to race," type thing, and that normally sort of put a line in the sand, and then we moved on for another 12 months, and then people wanted to clean it up again, or get into another part of the rule. So.
And Dave, that Derek used to race against the likes of Senna and Mansell, and those guys didn't give an inch, or take and used to take quite a few inches.
Yes, and we've had those conversations with him, and he said, "Well, that was then, and this is now."
Yeah,
so,
good point.
He's his answer. But yeah, I mean, you can get unfair stewards. I won't mention any names, but there was it was actually in Austin. One of the stewards I had to go and see with one of the drivers, and there was definitely a bit of history there. And it definitely played out in the steward's room. So yeah, it's good to get a fair and square steward. It shouldn't be influenced after the fact either, should it? You should get most of it done on the circuit.
And talking about the argument you talked to Les about more guns, but you said it's a science, but we're all watch those pit stops with awe, right? It's poetry.
Just amazement.
It's poetry in motion. I mean, talking about the Netflix series, isn't that the intro to each one of those? And watching those pit stops, it's amazing to watch.
And as Dave said, it brings the human element of the whole team in. Those guys talk about that in the pub, all around England, because that's where most of them are based. And it's a pride thing. Those guys, like you said, they train hard to do that, because that's their game. They don't want to let Lewis down, or they don't want to let Verstappen down. Imagine if they'd got a wrong pit stop for Verstappen 28 seconds ahead when he came in for those hard tires at the end.
Yeah. And think about it. It can be a bit of a leveler, right? Well, up until this season, when the Mercedes is dominating, that was always a way for Red Bull to gain some time back.
Sure.
And Dave couldn't. I mean, I know Formula One is so much about the money, but couldn't even the Haas F1 team, say, all right, guys, we're going to stay up till 11 o'clock every night this week practicing this and get better and better? And couldn't they even try to become the fastest pit stop team? Yeah,
they can do as well. It's just, there's a budget that you have to put towards the equipment, and you have to put everything into perspective and make sure that it's going. But the Red Bull guys, they train really, really hard. Jonathan Wheatley, he took that on, and they have a car there with with a battery or a motorbike engine in, and they go in and out of the workshop every day, twice a day, and it's broken down. The whole thing's filmed, and whereas when I was doing it, you'd have a couple of guys from the factory pushing the car in when we had time at 4:00 in the afternoon type thing.
Williams employed Michael Johnson, the 400 meters runner, to work with the Williams guys at one point on diet and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, Williams, if you rewind back as well, there's a couple of other points to the pit stop, but Williams started the chase on the pit stops, and then Red Bull, got into it. But I think the other thing is, which is quite interesting, if you did make it all, for argument's sake, 3 seconds, and we rewind back to all the results that have been hindered by pit stop mistakes, wheels falling off, you probably delete quite a few fantastic races, and I think those are the things we have to look at as well.
All right, well, let's go to a break, and we'll continue our discussions after the break. You're listening to Speed City, live from Austin. Back after these messages.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Has your workforce moved from the office to the home or to the garage, or maybe a rented cabin with open Wi-Fi? If your company has expanded outside the office and moved all your applications to the cloud, there's a whole new world of threats you have to worry about, including ransomware. CrowdStrike revolutionized security by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most advanced cyber attacks, even those that have never been seen before. So now you can work securely anywhere. Try CrowdStrike Falcon free today and protect your data and employees anywhere. Welcome to Anywhere. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches. Access the CrowdStrike Falcon platform free at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. Dave O'Neill, I asked you a question during the break, and that was the whole hilarious answer to the question. But the question is, why does the Mercedes car seem to struggle behind cars? What's the answer?
Well, I think it could quite well be that they spent so much time in front, they've never had to develop the car with any turbulence, spinning over the affecting their aero side of things, the braking, all those dimensions which you'd normally look at.
It's like, what was that movie where they rip off the rearview mirror? What's behind us? Was that Cannonball Run?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. What behind us doesn't matter. Yeah. So you're right. They spent 7 years with never having to worry about that, and all of a sudden they're having to deal with that. I thought maybe that it was because Mercedes has not embraced the high rake that some of the other teams, actually a lot of the other teams now have, like Red Bull specifically.
Well, let's keep in mind too that one of the problems that has persisted for Mercedes is trouble getting their tires up into their operating window. They just didn't have sufficient downforce, particularly at the front end, I believe. And so that may be something that factors into why they have trouble in the wake turbulence behind a car ahead, is that they're just not aerodynamically set up for it. They're basically a car that was designed to lead.
Yeah, very true. Bob, you brought up something during the break, also something really exciting, whether or not you're a big fan or the opposite. But so in 2 weeks, we got a week off from Formula One. 2 weeks, we have Silverstone coming up, and we're going to see the sprint races.
Right, we're going to have a Saturday qualifying race. 100 kilometers, no pit stops. They'll qualify on Friday. 2 practices, Friday morning practice, Friday afternoon, qualifying for the sprint race. Saturday morning practice, Saturday qualifying race, and the positions in that race will decide the grid for Sunday's race. We'll also have a new rear tire on the car. It sounds like what Pirelli brought to test at Austria met with the approval of the teams. So to avoid the blowout situations like we had at Baku, they'll have a tougher rear tire on the cars, because Silverstone's also a track that has produced tire problems in the past. So there's a lot of questions to be answered in 2 weeks' time at the British Grand Prix.
Now, wait a minute. So it's not supposed to be any pit stops. Besides the handicap you get from taking a pit stop, is there a penalty for taking a pit stop? If you take a pit stop, you're out?
Self-imposed there.
Yeah. I was like, okay. But it's long enough, it should be a no pit stop sprint.
And don't even get me started on the tire rules under these sprint qualifying. It's going to be crazy. One fewer sets of tires, they get designated sets. You hand back some at certain points. There'll be no requirement that you use, one of each. So it just goes on and on and on. But we'll sort it all out in 2 weeks' time. And the key thing, championship, to me at least, is that by my rough math, which is never to be trusted, Verstappen now leads Hamilton by 26 points in the championship. So even if he scores no points in Britain, he will still be the championship leader. He may have, at worst, a tie if Lewis wins the race and takes the fast lap point. So I think it's significant that there's more than a race victory worth of points between Verstappen and Hamilton.
Good point.
Bob has a stack of back of napkins for his math. Hey, we got a caller on the line. We have Rick, and he's on his way to somewhere. He's on his way to the East Coast. Rick, welcome to the show.
How are you? Good morning, Dave. Dave and I are pretty good friends, and I'm driving from Michigan to Rhode Island at the moment. So halfway through, going through the mountains of Pennsylvania. So
Nice.
this is the first time I've been able to listen to the entire show, which was great. And it's the first time I've been able to listen to an F1 race on the radio, which was quite interesting versus seeing it on TV. And I'm just so excited about this season. This is the kind of racing I've been waiting to see. Even with the sometimes the goofy penalties and things, but man, what a great season it's been. It's been so nice to see kind of the changing of the guards with Verstappen, who I think we all thought would, truly become, a championship driver, and he obviously is doing that. And it's just great to see the field being evened out a little bit. It's great to see McLaren doing so well, and it's really making what we've all wanted in F1, I think, for the past several years, where it just got so lopsided that it was almost becoming not too exciting to watch. But what a great race today, and it's been great to listen to you guys. And I got to send kudos to Dave. I've asked Dave a million times all sorts of different questions about F1, but that explanation on the pit stops and tire changing was one of the best pictures that's ever been painted of that I've ever heard, and so it was great to hear.
I agree. That's why I backed up on my statement. That made total sense. It wasn't, trash. It was all good.
Hey, so Rick had I'm with you on this season, and it's been fantastic to not have Mercedes dominate. But how about, I think we would have all exploded had Lando landed on the pole and been able to win the race. I mean, that's what we need now. We need 3 teams battling for it. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, and I thought Lando could have won today. Obviously, from listening to it on the radio, I mean, he was to make up that time today that he did was almost like Ayrton Senna-esque,
Mm-hmm.
And it was great to listen to, and I wish I would have been able to see the visual, because I'm sure it was absolutely amazing. But this is the kind of racing we want. And then, and I understand about the rules and the stewards and things like that kind of interfering with a race and interfering with a result. But I do understand the state aspect. I did have a quick question for Dave. Could he paint a picture of what it's like in that room with a driver talking to the stewards? Because that's one. He doesn't have to mention any names, but it'd be great to hear kind of what that looks like and sounds like.
Yeah,
he's smiling. Dave is.
Well, it's kind of when you've done something wrong at home and you're going to speak to your mum or dad, you've got to get your facts right. So the first thing we do is when we're on the wall would be, you get the IT department involved and you say, okay, like all the angles of what went on. And of course, all the information that the stewards have. So you have to be careful what information you bring up there, so you can start picking on the right view, if you like. And then you go up there, you get summoned. You go up there, there's only one person allowed in the room apart from you, and only you and the driver allowed in the room. There's not just one steward in there, there's 4 stewards. And then normally they, depends how, I guess, how vindictive they want to be. They say, "Do you know why you're here?" And yep. And then if it's a slam dunk and there's no point arguing about it, I normally used to say to the driver, "Look, it's time to eat humble pie here and take this as an honest one. If you're known for all the excuses and makeup, and then if there is two drivers and there's not normally something to be sorted out, they go in the room together. That's not always the case, but they normally see the cases first individually. Then you have to stand outside the room and wait for the decision to be made, and then they call you in and tell you why you've done it, why they've come up with this decision, and it's end of story at that point. So you have to shake hands, pretend everything's happy days, and then walk out and
swear later.
Get on with life. Yeah.
Alrighty. So what happened in the situation of Sebastian messing up Alonso's run? Would he have been called in, or do they just throw it out? There's 3 grids, 3 spots.
Most of the time, they'll before the race, you'll get called up because there's time to talk about it and explain why their decision is going in that direction. If it's something that they just don't want to talk about, it's just done. They send out the report and end of story. There's no argument type thing.
Well, especially that one. That was pretty cut and dry. Hey, one more question on this. What about reputation? When Pastor Maldonado used to come in, how
he just reported after every race.
Yeah.
He brought 30 million. That's all you need to know.
Okay, well, there you go.
Go ahead.
Dave, did reputation play into it, you think?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the other thing is, with earlier, half a decade ago, there was a huge amount of blue flags, which we don't see too much of now, which, a lot of the drivers in the mid-pack used to get into trouble, they're up the race leaders or influencing the race, which, wasn't particularly fair because of the way the rules were written. But, those drivers, I was always up in the steward's room with the Virgin Marussia lot because we're always getting that lap 2 or 3 times, which isn't what everyone wanted to see. And of course, when those sort of things happen, the speed difference between the cars is huge, and mistakes happen. You don't realise how quick they're coming up to you, and that's why you'd end up in the stewards. But now it's like Rick says, the rules are changed, and we're typically seeing not too many people getting lapped, which is nice. Everyone's on the same lap.
Yeah. All right. Well, we want to thank you, Rick, for calling. We appreciate it. We got to go to a break. Yeah, drive safe out there. And let's go to a break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. This is Speed City live on Sirius XM. Back after these messages.
Hey, this is Tony Stewart. You're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Hey, Tony, for bringing us back. Les, stop it. Stop smiling. I know what you're thinking. What Tony Stewart...
Brought to you by Prius.
Tony Stewart came on the show and he said, we said something about Prius, and he goes, Prius, stupid cars for stupid people.
I told him I'm putting that on a bumper sticker, and he goes, "Oh, dang it!
No,
I would have done
You're
that."
going straight to hell for that one.
Hey, we talk all the time
That's Tony
about
Stewart.
how Americans and American influence in Formula One's growing. Liberty Media owns the series now, and we got the Haas F1 team. We got a great home here at COTA, Doralton Capital, and Williams Investment, Zach Brown. We could go on and on and on. Actually, now it's a pretty long list, but we never give ourselves any credit and Liberty for putting Formula One races on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And having a show like this that's all about American voices with some British voices thrown in there. I mean, look, we got Bob Varsha, we got Dave O'Neill, who lives in Austin, Texas. All of us are involved as it can be in Formula One. And I just want to give ourselves a little pat on the back because it gives everybody a place to when you watch any sporting event after the race, you're so excited and you want to talk to people and watch and listen. Like after qualifying, I was in the car right after qualifying.
Yeah.
And I was like, where can I go? What can I listen to? And there was nothing. I was like, maybe we should do a post-qualifying show.
That's a good point.
But
Brilliant!
And by the
Write
way,
another check.
just to back it up, I'm looking forward to seeing the ratings again because ESPN's ratings have gone up exponentially in the last 4 races alone. We're now over a million viewers.
It's huge.
For ESPN's coverage.
Yep. Hey, Bob Varsha, you brought up something. Are we contractually bound, or is it just a gentleman's agreement that we have to talk about Ferrari every race? So they did have a good race again today, didn't they?
I used to do a little writing for a magazine, and I learned very early on that you have to talk about Ferrari in every article. Their following is so huge, so passionate, and so on. And I kind of agree with it.
Yeah.
Whatever's good for Ferrari is good for Formula One, and I think they had a great day today. I mean, Carlos Sainz went forever on his first set of tires, and then came home sixth, starting from 12th. Charles Leclerc certainly had an interesting, adventurous day. He finished eighth, so they had both cars in the points, and Leclerc remains the only driver in the top 10 in points who has yet to score a podium this year. So there's an interesting team situation going on at Ferrari, as well as the fact that they're trying to get their act together. These Austrian races were supposed to be essentially a test, said Carlos Sainz, as they tried to figure out their issues. It looks like maybe they've gotten some answers, and we'll see what they bring to Britain in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that they've had not great qualifying pace, but really good race pace, at least the last couple of races. Dave, any ideas about that? Why they would do that? Why they would be fast in qualifying, not as fast in qualifying as they're in the race?
I mean, it's difficult, but
sure,
most likely the answer would be that they can, run a pace for a longer period of time than anyone else on the same compounder tire. Would probably be the correct answer.
Yeah. Hey, I want to shift the topic to Honda. Jonathan, I know you have something you want to talk about, but Bob, Bob had something to lead into that, actually. Bob, you talked about how in our production call yesterday about Honda and staying on essentially sort of one more year.
That's where I was going.
Oh, that's your
but it's good. Good.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, well, Honda made it clear this week that they are going to continue to build engines for Red Bull during what they're calling a transition year, as Red Bull seeks to take over the intellectual property rights for the Honda engines and do their own in the future with a new company they're setting up called Red Bull Power Units or some darn thing.
Yeah.
Honda's going to help them to that point by continuing to build their engines in Japan for another year.
Yeah, and Jonathan,
I was looking at the Constructors' Championship, and I was going to throw that to Bob, was to say, look, Red Bull and Honda are on 286. Mercedes are second. The only other team, obviously third, McLaren, Mercedes, then Ferrari, but then in fifth place, and this is where the story is really telling, AlphaTauri Honda. And, Gasly and Tsunoda, for whatever reason, I don't know whether the design's good, but you've got to put a lot of it down to the Honda engine. They're fifth, ahead of Aston Martin, ahead of Alpine. And, if you're Honda at the moment, and we talked about Porsche, their reputation couldn't be right now. And they went through so many doldrum years where the Honda was, kind of taken through the mire, and now look at them. And what I was going to pose to Bob was, okay, you've got this extension, you've got the Red Bull, you've got the Red Bull saying they're going to make their own engines, but are Honda going to take a different viewpoint of this in the new era from 2022 onwards, given that now they truly do have a world-dominating engine?
Yeah, well, the Honda representatives on site were asked that question, given that they've now won 5 straight races. That's the most they've won consecutively since, their great year of 1988, when Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna won the first 11 races of the season, dropped 1, and won the other 3 or 4. It was an incredible year. But they said, no, this does not change Honda's plans to remove themselves from Formula One. So, that's sad, but that appears to be the case.
Interesting.
I want to talk about the W Series. We've got the W Series at several F1 races this year, including here in Austin.
Coda.
And did you guys see who was on pole and won the race?
Jamie
Chadwick.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm
the IBM star.
Yeah, the star of the IBM commercials. Yeah. I'm just a big fan of hers. And,
oh, yeah, she's good.
I mean, because I was with my daughter quite a bit on Saturday. We were doing car stuff with my daughter, and she asked me that question. She goes, something like, any female drivers? And I said, well, actually, Chadwick probably has as good a chance ever as a female to move into Formula One. I mean, I know it's a big stretch from where we are today, but what do you think?
Well, the question is, does she want to move away from a series that potentially could earn her $1 million? Given that.
Oh wow! Yeah. That's true.
I mean, it was seen as a chance to go F3 for all women, right? And then the chance to win $1 million, which would therefore give you a chance to have a budget to maybe go Indy, to maybe go GP2 or whatever, and potentially Formula One. But Jamie, you're right. Girl most likely at the moment, but there are others. And I think, for all the kind of talk of the W Series, I think Dave Ryan and David Coulthard, who are basically instrumental in making it happen, have done a really good job, actually, of making this a success and making it good for what it is, which is a chance for females to compete and actually get some real notoriety and some good racing in. I've enjoyed it, and like I said, it's national in terms of the entries as well. There's Australians, there's Brits, there's Americans. It's good.
Yeah.
I think we should also put a shout out there for one of the ladies that was on the podium there who wasn't driving, which is a lady called Annie Bradshaw, who's been in I guess probably getting my years wrong, but at least 40, 4 decades, maybe 5 decades, who's been the backbone behind a huge amount of these drive, being one of them, Stroll being one of the latest one, but also being able to go into that paddock with the W Series and give these ladies, young girls, a huge amount of encouragement and also pure knowledge that she has for them to be able to move forward. So one of my favourite ladies in the paddock, and also has done it before any of the other ladies that are here now have done it. She must have been, Bob, maybe one of the only ladies in the paddock for years before it all started.
Back in the 80s, that would have been the case.
Yeah. I've become friends with Annie, and she is absolutely spectacular, knows everybody, is extremely professional, and just a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about this week. We have, in 2 weeks, we have the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Bob, what do you think? Let's just preview it a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's one of the most iconic races on the calendar. But we do have the sprint races coming up, and what else to look forward to?
Well, there'll certainly be another totally over-the-top crowd. A lot more Verstappen fans, but you'll also see the traditional British fan support for British drivers in the series. So that'll be fun to see. I mean, Silverstone is always a spectacle. It's like an order of magnitude bigger than every other race that precedes it, simply because of the scale of the place. This former RAF bomber base that's been turned into a state-of-the-art racetrack, test track, manufacturing facility. It's just a spectacular place in the English Midlands. We'll have those new rear tires on the car, which the teams say doesn't seem to differ from what they had before, but you never quite know. You have a great championship with England's favorite Lewis, now the underdog. So I imagine there's going to be for him.
Yeah, that's British style, isn't it? Yeah,
I
Andy
think
Murray
that'll be
style.
a good boost.
What do you got to add to that, our in-house Brit?
Couldn't agree more. Bob's absolutely spot on, and Dave will back me up here, having been part of the Jordan Factor, which is across the road. It's the camping that really gets you. They're arriving now. They're arriving on Tuesday. Seriously, it's their summer holiday. I don't mean to be funny, but this, instead of going to Spain for the year, they come to the British Grand Prix. They camp out, they bring the whole family, and it's tradition.
Sounds like a great vacation to me.
All
right, well, we are out of time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to Joshua Carr, who was our guest on the pre-show. Thanks, everybody. Go to our website, speedcitybroadcast.com, and we'll talk to you next Sunday night on our local radio show.
Ciao, y'all.
Happy trails.